Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we're lingering back behind, but I'll go ahead and get started. But in the interim, I hope everybody's had a wonderful time. Has everyone had a wonderful time today so far? And enjoyed yourselves. And tonight we're going to have a wonderful event and dinner. At 7:30, we'll meet there at 7 to linger a bit, but we'll have a full-on concert and dinner out near the driving range, and we'll look forward to that. And we want to also give a hand to all of our staff and those that have helped us accomplish what we're experiencing now today. Thank you to them. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Scott Savlov, who will moderate this next discussion. And so we'll turn the time over to him for the remaining part of this afternoon.
Thank you, Scott. Give Scott Keller a round of applause. Wake yourselves up. Not used to working for such small rooms, so if you want to move forward, get a little closer to us, we'd appreciate it. We don't like to have to yell, so just try to get involved with our discussion here. We're here to talk about entrepreneurs and CEOs. That's what we have up here. We have two distinguished gentlemen who have tremendous background in that. They are both have an understanding of how to be an entrepreneur and how to be a CEO. Before they can speak, can someone please raise your hand, give us a definition of entrepreneur? Somebody in the crowd, give it. Mark, stop eating. Tell me a definition right here. He's jumping right up.
An entrepreneur is a person who would rather work 80 hours a week than work 40 for a paycheck.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, would you agree? Justin? Well, we're not going to cover that today. Not today. On our panel, we have Stan Ryan, and Stan's in from Seattle, and has pretty good perspective to give us as a CEO, having traveled the world and been in charge of companies with thousands of people. And in today's world, we're trying to keep employment, and getting people to show up is not an easy task. He's doing a pretty darn good job. And next to him is someone I've known quite a long time, Jim McCann. Jim McCann is his story is a unique one in that one would think he's the chairman of 1-800-Flowers. Now he does know flowers, so I'll give you a quick story, and then we'll start this process. We had the good fortune of going to Augusta this year, and we were at the Masters. So we're walking in this, and there was not a big crowd, kind of like this right now. And we walked in, and Jim looks over by one of the houses there, and he said, "Look at those azaleas, they need to be on ice." And I'm like, "Really? They need to be on ice?" He goes, "I'm somewhat qualified to give you that kind of an explanation." Jim is an entrepreneur, a chairman and CEO, and Paul, with his entrepreneurial background and CEO, I like both of them to take a shot and define entrepreneurial behavior and what it's like to then manage people, and how to use that entrepreneurial behavior correctly in today's world. Jim, why don't you start?
Sure. My story is simple. I started a business 45 years ago at 24 years old because I wasn't smart enough to pay attention in school, and I limited the number of choices I had in terms of a career path. I grew up in Queens, New York. I grew up in a very blue-collar neighborhood, and so as I thought about my career, I thought the role models I had were small business people in my community, and and small business people, shopkeepers, contractors. There was another entrepreneurial role model who lived on my block for a good number of years, but I didn't want to pursue his career path. His name was John Gotti, and it was a whole different kind of career, and it didn't have a good retirement plan, so I didn't go that way. But I thought I'd be a policeman or a fireman, as the heroes of my community were, and that was a career path I was on. So I, after a couple of colleges, decided I wasn't good enough to be with them anymore. I wound up going to City University, John Jay College of Criminal Justice, to pursue my police career. But along the way, I fulfilled a genetic requirement. Being an Irish Catholic kid from South Queens, New York, I was tending bar. And attending bar not far from Christine Tomas's house. She wasn't born yet, but I was tending bar at a place, the original TGI Fridays. And I did that. I was married young. We started a family young. And I was tending bar, and one of my customers, who would be there Friday and Saturday nights when I worked, told me he had a flower shop across the street and he was going to be selling it. And I thought, that's interesting. I just sold a building I had purchased and fixed up in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I had a $10,000 profit. I asked him what he was selling it for. He said $10,000. I thought, this is serendipity. I should go ahead with this. But my other career at that time was in social services. I ran a home for teenage boys, the kind of kids I hope you don't get to meet when you come to New York City, because you'll be poorer after the experience. But it was a wonderful first career for me. I did it for 14 years. And by the time this flower shop opportunity came along, I was not living in the group homes like I used to. I'm now the administrator at a home, and so it wasn't a 24/7 job anymore. And that's how I started my entrepreneurial career, Scott, was taking a lock at building a business by buying a flower shop because I could afford it.
Stan, first identify what was your first CEO position, and then evolve into where you are today, and explain your version or vision of entrepreneurial.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Stan Ryan. Well, I'll go backwards. I'm the CEO of Darigold now, which is one of your milk product brands here in the greater Pacific Northwest.
Speaking to the mic.
Here in the Pacific Northwest. I've been doing that for 5.5 years, and I did an interim shipping CEO for a while. Prior to that, I was 25 years with Cargill. I wouldn't call them CEO roles, but I'd call them president of a division or president of a business unit, and I ran about 7 of them all over the world. So I've been in global agribusiness and food my whole life, going from farm to processing to food products, essentially half outside of the U.S. and half inside the U.S. And you know what? I think I've been running established businesses, probably multi-billion-dollar businesses, for about the last 20 years or so. And in that time, I spent my time trying to hold back people like Jim, frankly. My definition of entrepreneurial is to not be eaten up by the entrepreneur to a degree. To a point, I think we would have called ourselves as people who needed to be very enterprising, very commercially active, very commercially leaning forward, because there were entrepreneurs out there who we defined more as a startup, a founder, or just iconic leaders, you know, like 1-800-Flowers, who take something from almost nothing and make it into a giant, thriving business. They tend to eat up larger established businesses. I don't think I've ever run a business that isn't at least 50 years old and already highly established. So my entrepreneurial, we call enterprising activity, has been, how do you get the stodgy out of an established business and get the next 50 years going? And I think it really comes down to a mindset. And it goes from the board, right through the leadership team, right through the culture of the organization. It needs to be kind of an organizing principle. You need to be very objective, look in the mirror of where you actually are in business and what's going on. Are you riding the waves, or are you going to make the waves? And in most of the businesses I went through, we went through sort of a, what I'd call determining our natural obsolescence rate, which I think every business has. Either a competitor is going to come out with new products, or we've alienated a customer who's going to cut us off, or some other online service will come up to eat our lunch. And it was usually 5 to 8% per year. We'd figure out, well, that means we're going to have to come up with double that of new stuff of our own to have a 5 to 8% growth rate. And if you can do that, compounded over 5 years, that's how you change an established business. That's how you put the enterprising into it. To do that, you got to have 3 times as much in the pipeline. So then that becomes your organizing mindset, drive, philosophy, how you think about people, what's important, where you put leadership energy, and the culture of your organization. And that's how I'd put enterprising into kind of established business.
One of the things I find interesting about Stan's business, Scott, is that we have an aspect of our business that's like yours, in that we have a network of florists around the country, around the world, who fill our orders for us. And we have about 7,000 of those florists in our network, and we have a team that works with them all the time. What were your thoughts when you came to Darigold to organize as a co-op? You don't just have to, you have a whole new set of constituents that you have to appeal to in a very different kind of way.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I go down to this mindset. One of your first mindsets is the world's outside our walls. You need everybody's eyes pointing outward. You need to be externally focused. To do that, you got to get internal unity first. And in a co-op, this is Paul McCulley's, one farmer, one vote. This is a legislative body as much as corporate governance, if you will. And how do you do that? You've got to show them the picture. You got to show them the objectivity that you're going to go forward or you're going to go backwards. We're going to show you victory or we're going to show you the trash can. And then we have to pick and go. And then you got to get looking outside of the company, not just bantering among yourselves.
Jim, when you, at 800 Flowers, you've acquired a lot of different companies under your umbrella. Stan is one of those type of people that you need when you make that acquisition to stand by and be a part of the team, because he is the cog in the wheel to keep that company, what you're acquiring, successful, or to make it more successful, to break out of its boundaries. You're a brand specialist. How do you look at a company and then assess personnel and the type of brand that you acquire?
Well, we were chatting earlier, it's tougher and tougher to keep an entrepreneurial spirit in your company as you grow, as you age as a business. And when we acquire companies, we try and grow by following our customer. And we're not really in the flower business, although it seems like we are. We're really in the business of helping our customers express themselves and connect to all the important people in their lives. They do that with digital greeting cards. They do that with a very inexpensive gift, sometimes no charge at all. They do that by recognizing someone at Mother's Day. They might come to our site and opine about how the mom in their life is so special, and we'll give them the ability to print that out in a beautiful frame in their home for no charge. So however they want to express themselves and connect to the important people in their lives, we'd like to be there for them. So we've been following them on that journey. So as a florist, and I always think of my business as a physical flower shop, even though we're an all e-commerce company. We have lots of branded shops, but we've sold them off to our franchisees now. These are much better run by individual families and individual owners. There is no economy of scale. I learned the hard way by having 40 flower shops. It's 40 more times you can get ripped off every day. But so that's the business we're in. So what we've done is, what else in that flower shop would they like to buy? Chocolates, gift baskets, balloons, greeting cards. So we followed the customer on the journey, all their food gift items, and made acquisitions where appropriate, or started a company from scratch. We are not very good at starting companies from scratch anymore. We become bureaucratic. So what we tend to do is buy smaller companies and tether them to us, but not attach themselves so that we strangle them. So we have to be realistic about what we're good at now and what we're not good at anymore.
Stan, you're with that in mind, running a co-op. Explain to everybody, there's different variations of the word co-op, but running a large co-op as you do, especially in a labor crisis moment in time as we have, it's got to have its own challenges. From a CEO's perspective, what are those challenges, and can you help define what your co-op is all about?
Sure. First, I just got to, you spark a comment, Jim. It's interesting to hear, because I think we'll always be sort of jealous, as I'd say, of the company that grew for 40 years. What I call under the iconic leader, that sort of customer savvy and touch you have. And we'd always have the impress that you just make those right moves, and you make them quickly and speedily, and we'd be bureaucratic and slow. And how do we compete in the world of consumers and customers versus others who are so adept at that.
Don't look behind
And
the
so
curtain.
it's very nice to welcome you into the club of having some of those kind of challenges. Yeah, maybe a little bit of backdrop. So Darigold's a dairy co-op. It's about $2.5 billion co-op in Montana, Idaho. We have 3 factories here in town, or here in Idaho, and 45 farms, and Washington and Oregon. It's about 350 dairy farms, spanning about 2 million acres of cropland that feeds the dairies, that feeds the 11 factories to make cheese and butter and chocolate milk and sour cream and so on and so forth. And we serve about 45% of what we do goes overseas to about 35 countries, and the rest of it stays domestic U.S. Hopefully you know our brand. The challenge is we break it into 13 districts who all vote for their board member. So they are elected board members who are responsible to their voters, if you will. At the same time, they're the supplier to the company. At the same time, they are the corporate governance. The board of directors would be myself and 13 elected farmers. And so the whole thing is set up for a conflict of interest, essentially. And how do you lead through a conflict of interest? And I would tell you, this is usually what I tell when I'm interviewing people, I got to tell you the pros and cons, and here's how it works. And I'd say 3/4 of all co-ops become a slow-moving, bureaucratic, internal-looking bureaucracy because they never get out of that sort of political mess, if you will. And 1/4 of them are high-performing juggernauts that are killers and go. And unfortunately, most of those are not in the U.S. Those are foreign competitors in most cases. And the key is if you can get all of the farmers and everybody aligned towards we want to be the winners, we want to be competitive, which means we got to act like doctors. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I'm going to be the voice of competitiveness to get you to do what's not in favor of your own farm today, but in the future of this entire farming processing complex in the long term for your kids. And get everybody aligned on that. And if you get that, employees love to work for farmers. Farmers are trusted people. Farmers are more trusted people than business people. I mean, they have a much better aura around them and stuff, so you can get the power of co-op, but it's very difficult to get into that, and it's very easy to fall backwards out of that, too.
Stan, in this environment, we've heard over the last couple of days that there's really pending labor crisis that we're going to go through. Pressure on wages, hard to find people who left the workforce, reluctant to come back, all those issues. The people who can pay are paying, poaching's going on. We heard about local construction crews can't get people to work for them. How do you, as a co-op, how do you prepare your membership to wrestle with that issue and find solutions?
Yeah. I'm struggling with it, frankly. I think this is one of the bigger challenges. And I think as we look at, so many things come down to governance, I think. With great governance, you get great leadership and you can generally get great results. And without great governance, you sort of deserve and get something else. And I think the role of employee on the whole stakeholder wheel is just going up. I had a discussion with somebody the other day as well, what's first, customers or employees? Right, let alone the government and financial and things like that. And it's such a critical factor, and there's such a battle for talent, and there's such a change in mindset of do I want to work remote? What kind of balanced life? Where do I want to live? All of these type of things. That's intense. In our case, we have a business where largely there's about 5,000 employees between factories and farms. Most of those jobs are physical jobs in that you can't be away. There's about 500 people are kind of office people, and you could be anywhere. But it grains against the corporate culture of a farmer-owned co-op where you should be at work 12 hours a day type of thing.
Do you have somebody in an HR talent function at the co-op that helps deal with these issues for your members?
Yes, but I would say that's work in process. That's not an easy
I
one.
think here at this conference next year, we'll be talking about the most talked about position in corporate America, the world corporate stage, will be the talent person, the HR person. Because as you listed all those things that they're going to have to deal with remote, when they do this, what's the culture of the organization? The role of it is some people are going to emerge as superstars who are going to be creative and do wild and crazy things, will get the support of their constituents to do fun things and interesting things. And then there's going to be the companies that get left behind because they never thought of the HR function as being creative.
Yeah.
And boy, it sure has to be today.
We changed the name about 2 years ago from VP of HR to VP of Talent, Culture, and Engagement for a purpose,
Yep.
the type of thing. And then we try to use the farmers to engage people type of stuff because farmers are something, wow, I can feel that. I like that tangible. It's a bit of a selection whether you be with us or not. Our challenge is being headquartered in the city of Seattle where Amazon and Microsoft's there and Google's growing and so is Apple. And those businesses are very oriented to remote work. This is a.
Well, they are now.
These are crossing things that are quite challenging. I agree. It's one of the most difficult issues.
I made a comment to Stan earlier. I said that one of the things I think we had 500,000 businesses go out of business last year, another 500,000 that would have been formed weren't formed. So there's a gap now as a result of this past year and a half of business formation or business survival. And I just wonder if, I just see anecdotally in my own life, I see young people making a decision that I saw being made 40 years ago. I had a young man working for me. We had a bunch of flower shops, and he got engaged, and the gal he got engaged to said to him, if you want to marry me, you have to go get a job at a brand name company like a Bear Stearns or a Lehman Brothers, that he was embarrassed to be working for a small business. Well, a lot of that has changed over the years. The word entrepreneur wasn't used back then. It has been obviously wildly since then. But I wonder if it isn't a more straining time for young people now to say, wait, I could go to work for Google, make a lot of money, have an unbelievable benefit plan, or Amazon, and I don't have to put any capital at risk. And I could do that for a while and build up a nice little nest egg and not have to lose sleep if I'm on vacation because things aren't going well at work. Does that cause more people to not pursue a small business or an entrepreneurial career? And Stan, tell them what your reaction was in terms of your building.
Yeah. Well, I would live in a high-rise above the police station in downtown Seattle, 42nd floor.
Is it safe there?
It is there. It's safer than you see on TV, I'll put it that way. But it's probably 2/3 Amazon. We're about two blocks from Amazon headquarters. We're Zoe and I are the old people in the building. And I think they all want to be rock and roll Amazon and then go to the startup.
Yep.
Yeah.
But build that nest egg first.
Yeah.
Jim, how do you take a company that's been established as long as 800 Flowers? You've had lots of folks that started up as competitors, just seeing the success that you've had. How do you rebrand, advise people that are trying to look at themselves and their companies or what they're doing and trying to take an existing product and then rebrand it?
Well, 5 years ago, I have a younger brother, Chris, 10 years my junior, who became the CEO 5 years ago when I stepped down and became chair. And that's worked out well because the division of labor was that I was going to focus around the edges on where we need to go next. And frankly, if you look at businesses over this past 18 months, the COVID experience has been binary. Either it's been quite good for their business or horrible. If you're a restaurateur in a big city, New York, for example, there was nothing you could do. It was horrible for you and still is. For us in the expression and connection business, when people couldn't be with the people they wanted to, couldn't celebrate that birthday, couldn't say thank you, couldn't congratulate you on the new baby, the demand for our flower products, our food gift products, and our personalized gift products went through the roof. So we had very high-class challenges. Those high-class challenges were volume, keeping the supply chain intact, keeping up with demand, training enough customer service people, but it were high-class problems. So we had an unbelievable year, both on a top and bottom line, and this year is greater than that already. So it was very good for us from a demand point of view. Challenging in all the ways that you could expect. But it was also an opportunity for me and my little merry band of innovative people to fast forward the things that we wanted to do. So everyone talks about COVID being a great accelerant. What was going to happen in retail over 10 years happened in 1 year. What was going to happen in commercial real estate and retail real estate all got accelerated and pulled forward. And in our company, we've been trying to become we went through several different iterations. We had retail stores, then we rebranded as 1-800-Flowers and made the telephone number our primary. Then early on to the internet, the 1.0 internet that Jim Lobianco depicted. But we never gave up anything we had. We just keep adding new access modalities. Any way that we can and should be convenient for our customers to act on their thoughtfulness, we should do. The current wave is the most exciting one for me. So this is the fifth wave, internet, then social and mobile, and now this wave, my brother coined a term about 5 or 6 years ago called conversational commerce. Using the tools and the technology. I bored Christine and Regina at lunch about stories of this little shop I had on First Avenue in Manhattan, how it was really an interesting little neighborhood. You think of Manhattan as not being a neighborhood, but it's a collection of little neighborhoods in the residential sections. And all that we learned from that. And the genuine relationship we had with our neighbors who would come in all the time, even if it wasn't to transact. Well, fast forward today, we're trying to mimic those relationships, and the only way you can do it now with 40 million customers is with good use of technology. And so we use this year to accelerate our engagement, because we changed it from conversational commerce to engagement commerce. We moved it to much more engagement commerce. I started writing a letter to our customers back at the beginning of the pandemic. I didn't try and sell anything. I didn't say anything about discounts or anything. I just wrote a letter about how we were feeling, how COVID was impacting us, wondering how it was impacting our customers. Well, it's become a bit of a phenomenon now because we now have 7 million active readers of that letter every week, and it's growing kind of quickly on top of that. And I still have never asked a customer to buy anything from us. But we've genuinely taken great steps to become a community. We used to do floral design classes. I figured if you come into our shop and have a sip of wine with us, one of our Cheryl's cookies, and worked with people and learned how to make a flower arrangement for Thanksgiving, you're going to feel different about us than if you'd never come or if your neighbor hadn't dragged you to the class. Well, COVID comes, they all have to stop, and so we went digital. And we had 500,000 people take classes with us this past year on making a crudité platter. We have a brand called Harry and David, and we do a Harry and David virtual dinner of the month now. And we have tens of thousands of people come to our dinners. And I saw a band last night that I'd like to perform at one of our next Harry and David dinners. They were awfully good, and they'd fit right in. So we're doing everything to engage customers. So we're using the cover of this, and that's helped our culture to become a little bit more entrepreneurial, because they see these things happen. Because I'm there, I can force people to do what they don't want to do and knock some heads together every once in a while if I have to. But that's the benefit of me being in the role I'm in, is that I can force these. We also created a community of peer-to-peer help. So we were very interested in the mental health consequences of our employees, of our community, the loneliness epidemic that we've been researching and writing about for a long time. And so we created a community of peer-to-peer help where you could come, and if you're going through something, well, there's somebody out there who's already been through that. You're a new mom, your mother-in-law's gone, you got this little baby at home, you got to take care of this little critter, and you're nervous. Well, there's been a lot of people who've already done that. And so we created a peer-to-peer help community. We have 250,000 people who come onto our website, go into our communities to help other people or to get help themselves. So we're trying to change what it means to be engaged with our customers.
Stan, same kind of thought process, consumer packaged good company, not an easy evolution. Changing branding can sometimes displace people in the stores. They go to the same aisle, they're looking in the same shelves. If you change your label, they may not really identify with what they're used to seeing from your go-to brand. How have you found it a challenge, or what's the process of your thought with your team creating that same kind of community element and keeping the rebranding and keeping it fresh?
Yeah. I would maybe just building off, there's sort of this theme in the conference right now, are you optimistic or pessimistic? Are you more worried or more excited about it? I'd be more on the optimistic. There's more opportunities, going forward than there are threats, notwithstanding threats and problems and things like that. Maybe one comment. I agree with your comment, Jim. I mean, from all my perspective, COVID accelerated all of the existing underlying trends that were happening and sped them up, if you will. So online is an obvious one on that. It's really interesting. So the building I spoke of, it's 4 years old. We moved in. It was built for e-commerce. 2 large storerooms to receive boxes. We even have a flower refrigerator.
What?
All set up in the building for receiving flowers.
More competition.
Yeah, it's supposed to receive your flowers, Jim.
Okay.
And the place overflowed. You know, the lobby's full of boxes and everything. And from everything I can tell, those habits aren't changing. It's easy, it's convenient, and everything. They're not changing. I saw the same thing in, we sort of had a retail explosion, at the time, and obviously that's where all the shopping took place, in that you got a chance to get more experience. People couldn't get food. You got opportunity to get into places. You saw this trend of, call it local food or regional brands.
Turn yours off.
How's that?
Turn yours off.
The wind is here.
Yep.
But, we're a regional brand. It's a Darigold versus Kraft, if you will. The regional brands were more popular. The trend of people wanting to have something new, something healthy, something exciting, something they haven't seen before, something dynamic, new variety, experiment, try, it just continued even further. So it gave you an opportunity, if you're leaning into things, not just retrenching and cutting costs and holding on, gave you an opportunity to get new distribution, get new trials, get things going. And I think it gave people an opportunity to distinguish brands in ways they didn't have before in a shorter amount of time, and frankly with less investment to do it. So, if you're leaning forward into things, I think it was an opportune time, and we'll see how it comes afterwards, if it goes. But
Good opportunity for us to ask if you have any questions for Stan and for Jim. This is a great opportunity to throw them a question.
Okay. Jim and Stan, I'm wondering, you both talked about innovating and the challenges of innovating as companies get more mature. So I'm wondering how you drive specific product innovation at your companies.
For us, I think it's a big point of what kind of culture do you have? What do you reward? What do you punish? What do you celebrate? And every once in a while, you have to hit the reset button culturally on, are you rewarding people taking experiments? One of the things that we had in our place for a long time is in our main office, we have a wall of shame, which is all of my ideas that didn't work, mostly my ideas. And we had one, I thought for a while that as long as it was floral, we could sell it. We could put flowers on anything. And so we did a catalog that featured all gift items or self-consumption items, and it had something floral on it. I have, for a long time, about 20 boxes of beautiful satin jackets for a lady with an embroidered rose on the back. If you want a deal on them, I still have an awful lot of them. I learned you can't sell anything. But the reason why we had that wall of shame was to tell people you can take chances, and we make fun of ourselves when they don't work out, but we don't shoot you. So it's all about tweaking the culture and celebrating people taking risk. The one thing we're still good at is celebrating people who try and be early. So we're always early to the new technologies, whether it's accepting Bitcoin or it's being the first voice-activated thing you could do on Alexa. Before you could do anything on Amazon, you could order from us. Being the first thing you could do on a Facebook voice bot. We celebrate the people who made those things happen. They're the heroes, they're the stars. Their portraits hang in our office. So we try and culturally encourage people to take risk and be early.
So I'm really interested in your customer access points, and I think what I'm hearing is the phone number and the internet are probably the two biggest. What other ones do you have? What other ones do you think are important? And what is your customer acquisition strategy to get people to go to the website or the 800 number or going?
Well, for us, because we have an 800 number, it's about 4% of our business. 96% is directly online. We still have retail stores. We don't count those sales in our sales because they're franchise owned. The biggest thing we could do now is serve you. I'll give you for instance. a florist, the sympathy category is an important category for us. It's been in decline for 25 years. 4 years ago, I contacted a friend of mine who has a well-known media fellow. His name is John Tesh. So he's a musician, he's got a radio show in about 400 markets, a newscaster. And I said, John, I'd like to be on your program, and I'm willing to pay for it, but I don't want to buy any ads. And he said, what? I said, we'd like to, we can't run an ad to say, hey, buy off, when you know someone who dies, we have cheaper flowers. It doesn't work. So what we did was we commissioned a dozen people in our shop to go get the best information to help people in a multicultural environment to know what to do when Amit in the IT department leaves for India because his dad just passed away, and everybody says, oh my God, what do we do? How do we acknowledge it? How do we express ourselves? Let's make sure we're the resource that we have all that information by region, by culture, by religion, etc. And so we went on John Tesh's show, and we just asked him to engage with his audience, and we primed the pump with real live scenarios, questions that would come up. Fast forward, last year our sympathy category, so we never ran ads. All we did was have a discussion in a social media environment and on his program, which should lead you back to a social media environment. But this is why I'm so convinced that marketing has to change. You have to serve your customer, and if you serve them, then you'll get fair consideration when a transaction is possible or appropriate. Trending down 25 years, still trending down for the rest of the industry, ticked up for the whole industry last year, 2%. Our sympathy sales were up 65% last year during COVID. Because for 4 years we've been doing nothing but investing in information and services that are helpful and beneficial and convening the experts. And frankly, what we just finished doing, and I'll be publishing a white paper on this, is I spent the last 7 or 8 months now interviewing really smart, thoughtful people who understand that segment of the world and saying, how does COVID change everything in terms of how we'll express ourselves around death and sympathy in the future? And we had some unbelievable, thoughtful input on that, and we've been publishing it, and now we'll compile it and put it together. But that's an example, I think, of how if you want to have a relationship with a consumer, you have to earn it. And more, our dollars are spent on how can we serve rather than how can we discount for you.
First of all, I just want to recognize the culture in your businesses that you guys are developing. I'm just in awe of it. I really respect it. And but I'm going to ask a more pedestrian question. You both are in consumables that are perishable. How do you manage supply chains in that environment?
Go ahead, Stan.
Delicately. We run our system at almost 100% capacity. It's 10 billion pounds of milk raw input that if it's not processed in 48 hours, it expires type of stuff. So it's a supply chain centric company at the core. The underlying plumbing has to work very much. So it's a tactical business, not a project business from a day-to-day operation. But that's the challenge of, I think, agribusiness, of going farm to consumer product, is you have a complicated supply chain in the business. So you have to have an operational excellence mindset underneath it. It's not observable to customers per se, but you're dead without it.
Same for us. It's a pain in the neck. I just don't know how to be in any other business, except I just realized I'm going into the cryptocurrency business. That seems like a no-brainer to me.
One more question.
This question is for Stan. Stan, I just wanted to know, during COVID, part of my job was triaging CEOs and businesses for Pence as head of the Corona, task force. I wanted to know specifically, as a CEO, how you sort of shifted your vision for the company and how you responded to it and got things back on track, especially in farming, where there was so many issues and shortages, and a lot of people having to burn grain and whatnot. So that's my question.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. I think I was a little bit fortunate, having worked all over the world, and Venezuela, Brazil, Europe, China, Australia, and having worked in the underdeveloped world a lot, having gone through 4 or 5 big crises before. I would say ones that were more severe than COVID, just none that lasted for a year, if you will. And a few things would come out. I think first in COVID, the question always came up: did that build and develop people, and build and develop their character, or did it reveal it? And one of the things it revealed is people would want to go plan. And I think the first thing in the crisis is we have a meeting and we make decisions. You make real-time decisions all the way, and you communicate like nothing. And so you move fast. Communication is your friend. People are aching for that. Employees are aching for that. The ambiguity, and then you get very, very decisive. You a little bit of information and make your calls and go and move fast. And you call out the risks and the rewards. And the risk is this is a chance to leapfrog ahead. We are not here to survive COVID. We are here to do well, take care of our employees first, and then to beat our competitors, bluntly spoken. And this is our chance to kind of get ahead. But communication and speed of decision making break the bureaucracy overnight in the crisis.
Stan will be providing us milk for all the cookies in the back after this, and we'd like to thank Stan Ryan, Jim McCann, and thank everybody. Scott, would you like to come on back?
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott, Jim, Stan. Very informative, very interesting. That concludes today's discussions. And so tonight, I'll remind you again, 7:30 dinner, and we have tonight the BBC Cowboy Cocktails and Cauldron dinner at the driving range, and a concert with Chef Bomac and the Nashville All-Stars Acoustic, as we'd heard last night, but in a little bit more detail. So we'll look forward to having a wonderful time with all of you and whomever else decides to show up. And thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for everybody.